Hi, I'm Dan, and welcome to episode 2 of the ENTJ podcast. As an ENTJ on the Myers-Briggs personality test, I wanted to develop a channel where we could explore the mind of an ENTJ as well as learn about the cognitive functions that don't come so naturally to an ENTJ. This is about maturity and growth. So whether you've just discovered you're an ENTJ, you're not an ENTJ, but you want to learn more about the ENTJ mind, you've come to the right place. Last week on the show, we talked about the ENTJ mind's top 2 cognitive functions. First, extroverted thinking, which is about decision making, and second, introverted intuition, which supplies the information for those decisions. Now, I want to thank you for your support of the channel. When I uploaded my first video last week, I had no idea what to expect. But your feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, and it's helped me set some goals too. If I can get to 50 subscribers, I'll buy a better webcam. That's probably the first thing I need to do to make this channel more professional. If I can get to 150 subscribers, I'll start decorating this room behind me. Some of you mentioned it's not so pretty. And you're right, I have just actually moved to Sweden from Australia with just a suitcase during COVID less than 2 months ago. So yeah, this room could use some more color. So if you want to see more ENTJ content, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment below to show your support. I'm really glad you're here. Now, on today's show, I want to uncover the mystery of introverted intuition. I think it's something that a lot of people have trouble fully understanding, myself included. Last week on the show, I made it seem a lot more conscious than it actually is. Yes, for an ENTJ, it's about analysis and analysis of problems to help the ENTJ make decisions. It's the secondary cognitive function, and that serves the first. But I made it out to be a lot more conscious than it actually is. You see, introverted intuition, by definition, is not something that's conscious, but it's primarily subconscious. I think humans, though, have had a hard time understanding intuition in general for a long time. The ancient Greeks, they didn't even think their intuition was their own minds at all. They had this idea of a genie. Much like the genie of Aladdin, it was a magical spirit which inhabited the minds and the bodies of every individual. So if you were a famous philosopher or a great artist, it wasn't you coming up with your inspired speeches or your amazing artwork. It was the genie inside. In fact, this word genie is where the English word genius comes from. And it is true, people who are in touch with their introverted intuition or their extroverted intuition can be described as geniuses. But don't get too chuffed as an ENTJ. Remember, it's not your primary cognitive function. It's only your secondary cognitive function. And your weaker cognitive functions are the ones involved with feelings. And feelings are pretty important in the modern world. But it was Carl Jung, when he first articulated the idea of intuition and the 8 cognitive functions, who realized it's not something supernatural, but it's the mind interacting with the depths of its own subconscious. That's what introverted intuition really is. And he, Carl Jung, was an INFJ himself, maybe an INTJ, but he certainly was a dominant introverted intuition personality type. So for the ENTJ, what does introverted intuition look like in reality? Well, for me as an ENTJ, it makes high pressure situations kind of fun. Right now, I'm using my introverted intuition. When I'm at a job interview, I'm using my introverted intuition. When I'm giving a speech, I can step out, start talking, not knowing exactly where I'll end up, what exactly I'll say, but I can rely on my introverted intuition to bubble up the information necessary to help me. It is analytical, but it's just there when I need it. It's not something that's consciously going on in my mind. I think if this is still hard for you to understand, maybe you're familiar with the cenotes of Central America. A cenote is a natural sinkhole made of limestone, where the erosion has exposed vast, deep wells of fresh water. Now, the conscious mind is like the visible exterior of the cenote. This is the world of the sensory. Those high in the sensing cognitive functions are adept at processing and acting within the practical, conscious world. However, the water of the cenote is much more mysterious. It can even be a little unsettling. What exactly is down there in the depths of the human mind? An ENTJ with Ni as the secondary function is mostly just observing the surface, looking for information that bubbles up. But for the dominant NIs, the INTJs, the INFJs, they dive in, perhaps not too deep, sitting below the surface, peering up at the sensory world through the lens of their intuition. So what do you think of my Cenote analogy? I think it's important to keep in mind that introverted intuition isn't the only intuitive cognitive function. There's also extroverted intuition, or Ni. And people who have Ni as their primary cognitive function are probably the true geniuses, because they do interact with their intuitive mind, but they don't just peer up at the sensory world through it. They constantly bring it up, splash it about, and force it to interact with the sensory world. They're not always the easiest personalities to get along with, but they are the true geniuses. They do change the world. Thomas Edison, Russell Brand, and Leonardo da Vinci are all thought to have extroverted intuition as their primary cognitive function. So where does extroverted intuition sit in the ENTJ's cognitive function stack? Not that great. It's third last, position number 6 of 8. But at least we can work on our introverted intuition. Yes, we can work on our extroverted intuition too, and I think that's a great benefit to an ENTJ, to work on those weaker cognitive functions. But to work on the ones that are our strengths, well, we're going to see the best results from that because we're constantly naturally using them to interact with our everyday world. So next week on the show, I want to give you some practical ideas. Today's been, well, theory, but I think you're going to best grow through ideas to grow and mature your intuitive, I keep saying that, introverted intuition. Now, surprisingly, for the ENTJ, it involves connecting with something that seems almost the polar opposite of intuition. That is our third cognitive function, extroverted sensing. So, if you'd like more ENTJ content, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and leave a comment below. What's your experience of introverted intuition? How would you describe it? And what tips would you have for someone who is wanting to grow their intuition? Thank you so much for watching this video today. I'm going to leave you with a clip from Carl Jung, the man himself, describing his experience of introverted intuition. Let's check it out.
Let me tell you a story which happened a long while ago. I was sent a young patient who suffered from incurable insomnia. She was a teacher who had successfully completed her studies, but who lived in constant fear of making a mistake. She'd got into an unbearable state of spasmodic tension. I tried to explain to her that psychic relaxation was necessary, that I, for example, found relaxation by sailing on the lake, by letting myself go with the wind, that this was good for one, necessary for everybody. But I could see by her eyes that she didn't understand. Then, as I talked of sailing and of the wind, I heard the voice of my mother singing a lullaby to my little sister, as she used to do when I was 8 or 9, a story of a little girl in a little boat on the Rhine with little fishes. And I began, almost without doing it on purpose, to hum what I was telling her about the wind, the waves, the sailing and relaxation, to the tune of the little lullaby. I could see that she was enchanted. Years later, her doctor told me she came back cured, and I always wanted to know what you had done. All she could tell me was some story about sailing and the wind, and I never could get her to tell me what you really did. How was I to explain to him that I had simply listened to something within myself? How was I to tell him that I had sung her a lullaby with my mother's voice? Enchantment like that is the oldest form of medicine. But it all happened outside of my reason. It was not until later that I thought about it rationally and tried to arrive at the laws behind it. She was cured by the grace of God.